This is In the Trenches, broadcast 25.
Welcome to In the Trenches, where entrepreneurs, artists, writers, designers, inventors, warriors, and leaders share their stories of doing the hard, creative work that impacts all of our lives. Let the journey inspire you to do something worthwhile, build something bold, and create your life's work. And now, your host, Tom Morkis.
Antonio, thank you so much for being on the call with us today.
Thank you. It's my pleasure.
So tell us a little bit about your background, how you got started in publishing, digital publishing, and creating Life and Thyme, the digital magazine.
Yeah, definitely. So it's been a little over a year now that we've been running Life and Thyme, and my background's in interactive design and basically founding interactive agencies in the past. So I've sort of been like an entrepreneur for the past 7 years, just creating a variety of different companies and mainly agencies. So out of that, Life and Thyme kind of, sprouted as a creative outlet more than anything else. Because once you're in the agency world, you're constantly creating projects and work for other people. And you kind of lose that sort of emotional attachment you have for your own creative work. And I'm naturally a creative person, so I love design, I love cinema, I love storytelling. So I wanted to really find some sort of outlet for creating a playground within the creative world, but have some sort of common goal that other people kind of get behind on. And I've been just incredibly passionate about food in general because I grew up in a place where mom was always cooking and I was always in the kitchen. And food just played a major role for our family. And I realized that food could be that common goal for other creative people to kind of get involved. And it started off as just a very simple blog. I think we started with Tumblr or something like that. It was really just documenting what we would eat, and we started to really focus on the people behind food culture, and very, very casual, very informal. But the more we started to work on it, and this was myself and two other guys who are filmmakers, we started to really spend a lot of time on the creative process behind it and how these stories would be delivered. So we had a variety of, essays, written content, and short films. And honestly, we were just playing around. We were just experimenting and giving ourselves an outlet for this sort of stuff. But it started to really take off with a life of its own, and just started to, this sort of storytelling resonated with a lot of people that were interested in food. So this was about a year and a half ago, and I quickly realized that there was something much more, much bigger and something much more special about this project, that I wanted to pursue it full time and see where it could go. So in a nutshell, that's sort of what Life and Thyme is, and how it sort of started. And I keep going back to working with creative people because more than anything, I love to just collaborate, and I love to be in the process of creating something that is more of what I care about. And we just happen to love food. So the more we work with other creative people, other writers, other photographers, other filmmakers, we're only using food as sort of that vehicle to kind of bring us all together and to cultivate a community around creativity, community, and collaboration.
Sure. And so it's so yeah, there's definitely like a lot of different interests colliding here in a really cool way. So obviously, I think that stands out to me about Life and Thyme online, the digital magazine component is its design and how it looks. So obviously, your background in design, I'm sure that had a big part in that. I'm guessing you were probably lead design. You created that. So tell us a little bit about the design that went into this and why you created the look and feel of it the way you did.
Yeah, I mean, I've been in the design world for, I don't know, maybe like 15 years now. And it's what I know, it's what I know best. And Life and Thyme has become this culmination of all my passions. And every step along the way of my journey up to Life and Thyme, it sort of like led to what Life and Thyme is now. So every trick in the book that I sort of came across, and every sort of aesthetic and inspiration, because trends change drastically when it comes to web. So what Life and Thyme is now is sort of my culmination of inspirations that I've sort of collected across my journey throughout this whole time. And honestly, it came to the point where I just wanted something very simplified. And if you look at the design of Life and Thyme, it is very simplified. You let the photography, more than anything, do all the talking, and it's just very clean and very approachable, I think. And even just the typography, it's very straightforward. I'm not trying to put on like a ton of bells and whistles because I believe in the content, first and foremost, and trying to achieve a design that is useful and minimal and simplistic is probably the hardest thing you could design. Usually that requires most of your energy and most of the work than something that is more convoluted and just like all these different bells and gimmicks and whistles. So I feel like Life and Thyme is definitely, what I've sort of been working towards all these past years into what I think should be a magazine platform and how it should be presented, at least in the digital world.
Sure. And so it's interesting because when I look at the design and or some of the things you were saying in terms of like getting an ideal design that's functional and beautiful, it's really difficult. And I think anybody that hasn't done design might not recognize just how hard it is to create something that's practical and beautiful and intuitive.
Right.
I'm curious, do you see that there's crossover between design and then the artisan craft of like food? Do you see that parallel there? Like, is there some connection there between good design and good food making?
Oh, definitely, man. I mean, chefs and, people who cook professionally, there is definitely an artistic side to it. Just plating in general, that's where you let your artistic side kind of come out, and presentation plays such a big role within food because you eat with your eyes first, and the delivery of food, the environment, the ambience is going to play a role first than the first bite that you're going to have, and I think that's why one of the things that really resonated with chefs in general was that there is a creative process that goes behind it. There is inspiration that they need to seek out, and there's even trends, and you also play with color, texture, and the same principles and foundation that goes into a design, whether it's graphic design or a web design. So at least with that, I feel like I understand that process and I could relate to it in some way. And I love to be just around people that are in food. I would love to be like in kitchens as well, and just sort of observing their process and observing how what they do and how they do it can be applied to the same way that we produce a short film, or how we produce, the design of Life and Thyme. It's all very similar, and very humbling once you make that sort of distinction, and you get to appreciate the work that goes into it, you know?
Sure, absolutely. That's pretty interesting then, the fact that you were able to identify these different passions that you have and bring them all together into a cohesive whole and something that sounds like it's growing in popularity and success. So tell me about that journey from the inception of the idea, which you've kind of touched on a little bit, to where it's at today. Has it transformed? Has the original idea transformed? And what has it become based on like what your initial idea was to what it is today and where it's going?
The initial idea has changed just, a little bit. We were always about storytelling, right? And we were always wanted to be documenting what food culture is in the best way possible. And what I noticed was that, you have all these different media outlets that focus on food, and the majority of it is garbage. I mean, even on TV, it's just nothing but like food competitions. And online, it's just, a bunch of publications that focus on, here are the top 10 coffee shops to hit up in LA, that sort of thing. Or whether, cupcakes are still in, or cronuts, or whatever it is. So it's just so tabloid driven and just breaking news, and less of, the stories and the people behind it, and the emotion and the human aspect behind who's feeding you and where the food is coming from. So that's always been our number one goal, is to focus on that sort of aspect of what food culture is. The thing that sort of changed was our approach, and how we deliver content, and who is contributing the content. Because we started with it was just ourselves producing the content, and there's only so much that we could produce, and we're also in Los Angeles, so we didn't just want it to be LA centric. So we needed to start to cultivate a community of contributors that could get involved across the globe. And that's when we started to focus immensely on building this community, not just to build our readers and viewers, but to get more creative people that are just like us. There's a ton of like amazing photographers out there, a ton of amazing writers and filmmakers. So I wanted to tap into that sort of idea of getting these people involved and have a common goal, which was to document food. And when you have that common goal, especially with food, like everyone could get behind it. It's the one thing we all have in common. So we all got to eat. So naturally, a lot of these creative people are going to get excited to be involved because, they love food and you got to eat, and there's usually an interesting story to tell. So when we first started, there was really no clear goal where this was going to go, because it was just mainly a passion project more than anything. And once we realized that there was something there, and our community started to grow, and opportunities started to grow, and we just started to document more and more just across the globe, I realized that, number one, this was my calling, and this was what I wanted to pursue and grow and cultivate. And number two, we've been able to meet some of the most incredible people throughout this journey, both in food and just creative people. Like last week, we were just in New York shooting some stuff, and we got to meet our New York contributors for the first time. And they had already contributed on Life and Thyme, but we were meeting in person, and we hosted a nice little dinner. And meeting these people it was so humbling, and because they're so genuine, and they're just like us. They just care about the creative process, and they care about food. And they care about storytelling. So our focus changed from it's just about us documenting and more about cultivating a community that are just like us around the globe that could get behind this idea. And I keep saying community because that more than anything, that's what matters at the end of the day. It's not the website. It's not, it's not on Instagram. It's not what we create. It's the community that matters the most. And I think once you have a strong community, you could really move mountains, and not just between what is contributed to Life and Thyme, but just getting more people aware of what food is, where it's coming from, and understanding and appreciating honest food, because there's so much garbage and there's so much crap in the food industry that we're so bombarded with what hurts our bodies and what is a bunch of lies. So if we could just make a tiny little dent in the universe of getting other people involved and interested of what honest food is and just learning about where their food is coming from and appreciating the craft and the people and the amount of hours that, these chefs and these cooks spend in the kitchen, at least we did some good,
Absolutely. And would you say that you, whether by intention, by design, or by accident, this is kind of part of the farm to table movement that I feel is growing in popularity, definitely in the Midwest. I think you're from California, right? You're on the West Coast,
right?
And then you obviously just in New York, so you're kind of all over the place. Does this have any correlation to that, or what?
I think we've become starting something like Life and Thyme is much more acceptable now and accessible because food is lifestyle now, and yes, you do have the farm to table concept, which it's starting to become a little more buzzworthy and more of a marketing ploy, just like what happened with the words like organic and natural and artisan.
Sure.
So obviously you're going to have these, these ideas that kind of come in trends. But the idea of farm to table, at least in the major cities, if that's already a given, if you don't have a restaurant that's farm to table, you already run into a ton of issues, so it's not like this hot new thing. It's already accepted. That's already stage one, now what do you do next? How can you make that creative and how can you make that even better? Because people are starting to become much more educated and aware of food and quality. So when we started something like Life and Thyme, we're at a really interesting point because people are just more aware about, the knowledge of food. At the same time, there's a lot more competition. But when it comes to at least the media and the creative aspect of showcasing food, I think we're still very, very early. Just look on television, there really isn't something out there that is just focused on storytelling and approaching something in a much more cinematic way rather than just following someone around with a camera or food competitions, because that's just what makes money right now. So I think we're very young when it comes to how food is portrayed, at least online, on TV, and even on print, unless you have these very, very niche indie publications. But I think we're at the right point because, like I said, food is now just lifestyle. So once you start to introduce these new ideas and tapping into technology to deliver food culture, it's much more acceptable.
So, one of the things to bring us back to the creative aspect of it that I was curious about is because, again, it's something that kind of resonated with me when you said at the beginning was how this is kind of a culmination of multiple different passions that you had, that it started off as a passion project, mm-hmm. and now it's really kind of a full-time endeavor, a real a driving mission. It sounds like you're really passionate about it, and I know you are. Mm-hmm. So tell me about that, from the entrepreneur's perspective, which you are too. how do you, we talked about how you kind of brought this vision to life, how it's transformed, but I'm sure somebody might be wondering, and I know I'm kind of curious about this too. How does an artist or creator, again, that's, I think one aspect of you as well, how does he or she, get to bring these visions to life and then make them something that they can do full time? So as far as like generate income, how are you guys doing that? How do you support yourselves when it comes to a vision like this that is not necessarily broadly accepted? You mentioned that, like, this is still kind of something that's still very much in our culture. It's just not widespread. So how do you, how do you do that? Like, how do you bring a vision like that to life from an economic standpoint? Like, how do you support yourself to bring it to life?
Yeah, definitely. So, I would consider Life and Thyme. It's sort of like a startup, right? And you need to be a little creative to come up with ideas and ways to generate revenue so you could survive, right? And from day one, I didn't want to bombard the website with a ton of banner ads or, advertisements all over the website. Because number one, people don't click on those things anymore. And number two, it would just lose Life and Thyme will lose its integrity and it would ruin the design. Plus, there's just, you need like huge amounts of traffic in order to just support that, at least in the beginning. So when we first started, we were part of another agency that I co-founded. So that's how we were generating that's how we were surviving, at least ourselves. Until we started to get contacted by other people in the food industry that would find Life and Thyme, they would view our content, and more importantly, they would see our short films, and then they would contact us and say, I want that. Like, I want to hire you to shoot something like that for our business or for our restaurant or whatever it is. And I was just like, so there is something to these short films that we created. Because, we would just go out there and shoot something and put it on the website, and it was just, again, it was just an experiment. It was just our way of fueling our own creative desires and what we wanted to create. But it was always in a very cinematic way, and it was a very we would treat each project like we were shooting a film. I don't even want to call it a video. It was a short film. And Ben, our videographer and filmmaker, he studied cinematography at LA Film School, so he like lives and breathes what is good cinema. So I wanted to have that sort of style for delivering food content. So we started getting hit up by other brands and other people that wanted that sort of style, and that's when we realized, well, let's open up a production house. Let's open up a production company focused on telling beautiful stories for other people, that it's for hire, for brands and businesses in the food industry. And that ranged from a tea lounge hitting us up from San Francisco to authors that are writing books and within food that they would hire us to shoot a book trailer within that sort of same cinematic style. So we had a very signature look to what we created. And that was sort of like a spark with me, and it was like, okay, that's going to be the way we generate revenue, at least right now. And it'll allow us to continue to produce what the magazine is. And it's sort of our calling card. So we've built this side of Life and Thyme, which is just like a production house to produce short films for other people. And that allows us to continue, what we're doing with Life and Thyme on the magazine side. And we're also helping, people in the food industry to look and be presented in a much better light. Because, we have such a soft spot for businesses in food that just, again, their perception outside of the restaurant or outside of the plate when it comes to being presented like digitally. There's just like not a lot of good stuff out there, So we wanted to fill that gap and be able to be hired to produce some of the same style of content that we've already created for the magazine.
Pretty cool. Actually, that's a really cool story and some seriously awesome lessons that I think somebody can draw from that. Like a number of them, I'm already thinking. But a couple that stand out to me is the concept that because it sounds like you started with the magazine, you started with that passion project, but then from the quality of work that you did, it was like you mentioned, it was like almost like a calling card, a digital calling card, and people reached out to you now in this production capacity.
Mm-hmm.
So that's really cool. That concept in and of itself is really cool. That the magazine was really, it sounds not necessarily intentional, but it was a springboard for you to start this production company. Is that about true?
Yeah, because here's the thing: when it comes to startups and just ideas that people have, I'm a firm believer of if you have an interesting idea and you believe in it, and you want it to just exist out in the world, just go out and do it. And even if there is no sort of plan to generate revenue, or you're not thinking about monetizing, like as soon as you want to create an idea and the first thing you're thinking is like monetizing, how am I going to monetize? That's what everyone is asking themselves. Like those are the ideas that usually end up failing or they just have no substance, if you just put like 110% into an idea, whether there is any strategic planning or anything or any sort of financial revenue or anything like that, if there's none of that, but you have an amazing idea and people could see the passion and the quality and the dedication, that's a business will be created around that, even if it's just content. Right now, like content is king. If you could deliver content that is both beautiful and it resonates with people and it's very powerful, there's going to be someone out there that is interested in that idea. There's just so many people out there that have so much money to just throw around, and they're looking for ideas. They're looking for people that are doing it right. They're looking for creative teams that could produce something and not just be thinking about like, how am I going to make money? Or all these people that they might have ideas, but they don't actually execute it because they have no money. Just go out and do it. Just put something out there and just work on it. It's not just about the money. That will come afterwards. If you produce something that is high quality and it's honest and it's beautiful, then you start to generate a community, and then you start to really get the interest of other people. So it's more of like show what you can do rather than saying like I have an idea and not executing. Does that make sense?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess the second question, because I definitely agree with you in terms of creating high quality stuff and the other monetary stuff falls into place. At least that can be the case. But there is one aspect where I think people can get hung up, and it's the concept of how does somebody then, or in your case, just tell us your story, get that awareness, or how do you build that awareness in the people that would then hire you? So, like you mentioned, these people are reaching out to you. You've built the platform. Did they see you through the platform, or was it through this community that you started to build? And that community is what brought along these people who would then hire you for the production capacity. Because I think that's a sticking point for people is, oh, I have this great idea. Maybe they'll even execute on it. And then it's like the gap there, or the chasm between creating something remarkable, but then actually not being able to connect that, like find other people or allow other people to find them. You know what I'm getting at when I say that?
Right. So at least from my perspective, like we have the creative side, right? But one of the things that a lot of people lack is the hustle. Even if we have like a beautiful design, we have a beautiful platform, or we have, amazing content, you still need a hustle, and you still need to go and meet people, specifically offline more than anything. And Life and Thyme sort of was built on just relationships and the connections that we built offline. So we would go out there and meet PR groups. We would meet with chefs and restaurants, and we would just try to get inside, because this was before we didn't really have a following. We didn't really have, Instagram followers or anything like that. So we still needed to just form relationships and connections. So the beauty of documenting interesting people and establishments is that it's sort of like a snowball effect. Like once you start to document one, they're going to start to reach out to their own community and promote the content, right? And that's going to spark into a much larger network that we might not have access to. So we love the idea of, we reach out to these tastemakers and these people that are doing something amazing and interesting. Take, for example, there's this, like Stumptown Coffee in the coffee world. They're huge, right? And they have such a loyal following, and they're loved between the coffee world. So hit them up, create something that's beautiful for them, and they're going to want to share it. They're going to want to share it around their community, and your word is just sort of spreading in all these different areas. So that's one way that we started to grow the community. And the second way was to tap into, some of these social networks that resonate well with what we're trying to do. Instagram has played a big role for us just because we're very visual. We're photographers, so we wanted to reach out to photographers in Instagram and start to form a community there. So we started to post, just amazing photos and amazing content on Instagram, and give like a little story behind each photo. It would allow us to promote our content that lives on the website, but we would also start to connect with just amazing people on Instagram. And I don't know what it is about Instagram, but people are more open to meeting offline than people like in Twitter or Facebook. Like the hot new thing is like these Insta meets on Instagram. And that idea, I'm always searching for those sort of interesting, quirky concepts, because people really love to get behind that sort of stuff. So I had a huge focus on trying to meet people offline. And once you meet someone that believes in what you're doing offline, like that is already like a much stronger, loyal connection. And I wanted to do that with the majority of our contributors and the majority of the people that we're covering, and just our connections and our followers, because you get to really see their genuine side, and they get to experience who you are as well. And there's something very powerful to that. And it's the same concept of what we're trying to do with Life and Thyme, which is get people around the dinner table, get friends and family together, and use food as a vehicle for community, and get people talking and just having conversation. It's something very, very, very artful and romanticized that there's a huge benefit to it. So that's where the hustle comes in. And, we're constantly just meeting people and just trying to set meetings with as many people as we possibly can, from all these different people within the food industry and also the creative world. So it's not just about creating beautiful content. It's also just getting out there and meeting people and talking to people. And yeah, I mean, it's just about hustling, really.
Love it, Antonio. I mean, you gave us some gold right there. And I know anybody listening, if they're paying attention, that right there, like that's so important to realize, is that really getting in front of people, getting to know people, getting to meet people in person is so powerful. And I continue to relearn that lesson all the time.
Yeah,
It's funny.
it's not
Yeah, go
about
ahead.
like it's not about how many followers you have on Twitter or Facebook or even Instagram. Like, get them in front of you, and that's when you find gold, and that's how real relationships are built, and that's how you might, it might lead to, one person, it might lead you to that person with a giant fat check that wants to give it to you. And you can't just have that same relationship when you just rely on social media, or just emails. So I don't know what it is about meeting people online or offline that's played a huge role with us, and I think for any business, meet them in person, grab a cup of coffee, as simple as that. And that's already, um, that would already take you like leaps and bounds to what, more than what a follower on Twitter would take you, because it's genuine, it's honest, it's real, it's human. And that's how, relationships are built.
I agree 100%. It's so powerful. And like I mentioned, it's something I feel like I continue to relearn all the time. Anytime like I feel like there's stagnation or whatever in what I'm doing, is literally is just as simple as if I can just connect with people in real life, then everything it's a multiplier effect. Or a
Definitely.
momentum builder. It just creates a spark for sure. So I think that's how you build like real passionate, loyal followers. I think is getting out and meeting people in person. On that note, because this will probably be one of my last wrap up questions before we let people know where they can find you and get on board Life and Thyme. I'm curious about this. I didn't necessarily intend to ask this question, but now that you brought it up, when it comes to these in person events, how have you organized them in the past? What has been like a really successful event for you? Something that maybe somebody else could model, or take the way you set it up, could take that same concept and apply it in their hometown.
That's proprietary information that I cannot give out. I'm just kidding.
Hey man, if that's true, that's fair.
No. When we start to experiment with these dinners and these events, these offline events, we started very early on, hosting dinners, and they were done so, they were very quirky, and there was no structure to it. We would just invite, between 12 and I think it was like 12 and like 17 people, just over to, and we would just have some dinner, and we would cook for them. So we had no chef or anything like that. It was just us in the kitchen, and, just getting people at a dinner table. And it's as simple as that. Like, just invite someone over to your home and feed them. Boom. I mean, we were just talking about inviting someone over for coffee. Like, invite them to your home and feed them. Like, you're going to be family after that. Like, there's something very special about
Yeah.
that. And so we started to really just focus on like these quirky little dinners, and it was a lot of stress too. Even though like they're a lot of fun, like just hosting events and like doing all the work yourself it's also like very stressful. So there was definitely, a lot of work and a lot of energy and even money that went into them, but I didn't care. I just wanted to get people involved and really play off of our mission of, cultivating a community both offline and online. But through our journey of meeting more people and making more connections, we wanted to form partnerships, with people that could fill in gaps within our events. I'm not a chef, so I'd rather have someone who's a professional that could do it. I'd rather partner up with them and get them involved, and then they could do all the cooking. Same with finding like a venue space. So a lot of the people that we cover on Life and Thyme, they have gorgeous spaces. And so we would do a story on them. We would take, beautiful photography, and then we would go back to them and be like, hey, listen, we've got this community. Let's partner up on some sort of event and get them in your space and you could be a part of the story, and you could be a part of what we're all about, and it's a win-win situation. Like, we get people in your space, they learn about you, they learn about the chef, and it's the same idea of what we try to do with our contributors. We want to collaborate and expose and give exposure to these amazing creative people, and provide a platform for their work to be presented. And it's the same thing with these events. Like, we want to be a platform where we could get people together and we could collaborate with people that have a specific skill set, whether it's cooking or drinks or a venue space, and have everything kind of fall in line with the same idea of collaboration, and it's really just proving to everyone else that you can collaborate with other people. You should find people that could fill those gaps within your own road, within your own idea, because you can't do everything on your own. Like, you just can't. So it's very important to find people that could work with you, and that could that are believers in your idea and your project, and just get them involved in fun and interesting ways. It doesn't have to be this full blown, like, 100-person dinner where tickets are like $200 a head. Like, it doesn't have to be that pretentious or that big. It could just be as simple as, like, inviting just 10 people for your home and just cook for them, and already you form those amazing relationships, and just start to experiment and just start to grow from that, and just keep pushing it and keep pushing it. And or it could even be as simple as like a Instagram meetup, which we've done, which we did I think it was like 2 or 3 weekends ago. We hosted an Instagram meetup in LA, which was also a coffee crawl. So we hit up 3 different coffee shops in downtown LA. And it was just like, we just posted on Instagram one day, and it was like, hey, we're going to be here. Anybody can show up. And I had no idea how many people were going to show up. And, all of a sudden, like 30 people, 30 like Instagrammers show up, and they're like, we're here for the coffee crawl. And like,
Nice.
It was just like no money went into it. And it was just so simple. The concept was so simple that, we started at this place called Handsome Coffee. They're really good friends. And even the founder of Handsome Coffee, Michael Phillips, he's a world barista champion, and he's huge within the coffee world. And he got involved, and he's like, I'll give everyone like a special VIP tour of the whole space and the roaster in the back. And it was just like, it was so like on the spot. There was no planning, there was no structure to it. And we were just sort of riffing, the whole time. And I think that is sort of like, that's like the story of my life. Like, I'm just in the moment and making decisions in the moment. There isn't like a whole lot of planning, which makes it like a much more fun experience. It's just like, let's just get people together and let's just see where it goes and what happens, And I think the more planning you try to do, and the more overthinking that you try to do, it's only going to make things much more stressful. And you just can't plan for everything, So I think it's just a matter of just doing something. If you have an idea, just go and do it. And if you think too hard about it, that's when you start to overthink things, and you start to get, the fear starts to settle in. And I think, man, I just think you just have to live in the moment, and things are not going to work out. You're going to fail at a certain point. But a lot of things are going to succeed. And I think that's how you learn from, your mistakes. And, if one person showed up to the coffee crawl or the Instagram meetup, that's already one person. That's already good enough. I'm like, I would have been happy with just one person. I would have a great cup of coffee with that one person. But, we just sort of play off of it, and not to, not take things so seriously. It's just, we're just having a good time more than anything.
That's awesome. I love it. Again, you just gave us so much gold, Antonio. I really appreciate it.
Thanks.
So, hey, man, I love this conversation. I could probably talk to you for a few more hours because everything you're saying resonates with me really deeply, intrinsically, and a lot of the stuff that I put time and effort into creating. It's very much, I think, the same philosophy. So but I don't want to keep you for another 3 hours. I want to cut myself off from asking questions and just give it to you to let people know about where they can find you online and how they can connect with you, and maybe if they're in LA or something like that, catch up on one of those Instagram meetups.
Yeah, for sure. So, you could see the magazine on lifeandthyme.com. So I want to make sure thyme is like the herb. So THYME.
Yeah. It looks like it sounds like it should be thyme.
Yeah, Life and Thyme. So you can see, what we're up to on the website, and we also have a section on there where you could browse our upcoming events. We try to host stuff not just in LA, but all over the US, and hopefully get contributors outside of the US to get involved as well to host events. But you could find, content on there. You could also follow us on Twitter, Instagram, and Facebook at Life and Thyme as well. But yeah, you could also join our newsletter on the website and just be up to date. We'd love to hear from you, and if you want to be a contributor, if you're listening to this and you're a photographer or a writer, or you're just hugely passionate about food, hit us up, because we're constantly looking for quality contributors, and follow our journey.
Awesome, Antonio. Sounds great. I'll make sure that's all linked up in the show notes and everybody gets access to that, and I'll encourage them to reach out to you. So again, thank you so much for being on the show, man. It was just a lot of gold that you just gave us, and I really appreciate it.
Thanks, man. I thank you, Tom. Appreciate it.
And that wraps up In the Trenches broadcast 25. If you enjoyed today's broadcast and would like to check out the show notes, just go to tommorkes.com/broadcast25, and that's the number 25. For the veterans in the audience, I'd like you to check out highspeedelite.com. Highspeedelite.com is an exclusive veterans mastermind and training site designed to help veterans like you succeed in the civilian world, either by landing the job of your dreams or by building your dream business from scratch. This program is being developed and led by John Lane Dumas, Antonio Centeno, and yours truly. If you don't know John or Antonio, they're both veterans and both incredibly successful entrepreneurs who have built million-dollar businesses, and they both care very much about helping other veterans succeed. HighSpeedElite.com is our way of making this happen. So if you're transitioning out of the military, considering transitioning out, or you've already entered the civilian workforce but would love a better job or would love to build your own business, check out HighSpeedElite.com. I think it could be right up your alley, and I hope to see you there. As always, this is Tom Morkes. If you're listening to this, you are the resistance.
Thank you for listening to In the Trenches. Your creative work doesn't stop here. Join the resistance, the small but growing army of entrepreneurs and artists putting a dent in the world at www.tommorkes.com. Never fight alone. Join the resistance.